The Rant Podcast is brought to you by CubsInsider.com. Welcome to The Rant. Welcome, everyone, to The Rant Podcast. Today is Saturday, January 25th. I'm one of your hosts, John Furlise, and I'm joined by your other co-host, Evan Altman, and we have someone new joining us today, Jacob Zanola. And Jacob is new to Cubs Insider, and he's new to The Rant. And so, hi, Jacob. You want to introduce yourself, tell people about you, whatever.
Yeah, thank you for having me, John and Evan. I'm in college. I'm a college student with majoring in sports journalism. I have my own podcast that I do on the side, hoping to get into beat writing and more of the baseball journalism aspect, whether that's with one singular team like it is right now with the Cubs or general baseball. And then this summer I will be interning in the Cape Cod League.
And what's your podcast?
Stuck in the Ivy podcast. Do some interviews every now and then. I got one that I'm working on editing right now for a minor league pitcher, but it's mainly just for interviews, get some cool connections and meet some cool people, get to learn their stories about getting into baseball.
Now, who's the kind of coolest person that you've interviewed on your podcast so far?
Oh, that's a good question. I've done quite a few minor leaguers. Christian Gordon.
The minor leaguers are always easier to get, it's like they line up for the attention. The major leaguers, not so much.
Right. Yeah. Christian Gordon was a fun one because he and Owen Ayers, because they had both just been drafted. And so I think it was neat to get their perspective about coming out of the draft. Robert Murray, I interviewed him, so it was neat to hear how he got into journalism. And then Alex Cohen, that was probably the coolest, getting to hear all of his fun stories for broadcasting the Iowa Cubs. I would say that's my favorite so far.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. I think both Evan and I interviewed him. I believe he was on The Rant probably a couple of years ago, right, Evan?
Yeah, we had Alex on back because we used to be kind of more interview centric, although that was also when we got this started. It was during the pandemic when nobody had anything to do. And it was just like we were like, I remember we interviewed Wayne Drace from ESPN, and he was like, you kidding? Like, this is the first time I've talked to adults in a week. Just because he's like at home with his kids or whatever. And but that was a lot of fun because we did a lot of the minor league guys and some of the big league guys too for a while there. I remember Alec Mills in particular was a really fun one, and there were some others that we got to talk to that that ended up being pretty good. And I think Alec was before his no-hitter. And we tried after that happened, then it was like, oh man, he was in much higher demand for some strange reason. But
we did try to get him on after that, though, and I remember we kind of got we got
stonewalled a little bit more at that point, because then you got to go through the agents, and it's like whatever.
Cool. Well, welcome, Jacob, to The Rant and to Cubs Insider. We're super psyched to have you, and everyone. You'll notice that there's more content now on Cubs Insider with Jacob joining, and he's got some really great takes and insights. And so be sure to check that out. And so, as we talk about what's happening around the Cubs right now, it seems like a lot of the conversations that are happening are around the bullpen for good reason, because the Cubs really need to do something with the bullpen. And it feels like every single time there's, talk about someone, the Dodgers just go and sign that person. And that's true for not just bullpen pitchers, but pretty much everyone that's been available, Sasaki, and the list goes on. And so here we are now. Kind of options are getting limited, and the most recent conversation is around Ryan Presley, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name. I'm kidding. That's a joke. Correct. It's just a jab at myself. Yeah.
No, his first name is Bob. That's pronounced Bob. Yeah.
And so serial mispronouncer here, John Furlise, that's me. So I mean, what do you guys think? Jacob, let's start with you, since you're kind of new to the show. What are your thoughts around the Cubs bullpen kind of as it stands right now, if they don't do anything going into the season? And then the talk around, kind of some of these moving pieces of possible additions they could bring into the bullpen?
Well, I think that Tanner Scott, missing out on him was a big blow because they really wanted him. Not that they ever thought they were going to get him, but it was clear, kind of with how they were willing to go really high budget-wise with Ohtani, and it was a one-time thing. It's pretty clear that was the same with Scott, that they were willing to not open up the bag for him because they're cheap and don't pay their players, but they were willing to go a little bit more than others. We're in a unique situation because we have multiple pitchers like Colin Ray, Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad, that I don't love being in the rotation, but they're not necessarily bullpen starters. So do you enter the season with 3 to 4 quote unquote long relievers in the bullpen? Do you trade them? Do you put them send them down to Iowa and have them work there? It's a good problem to have, but we have a lot of okay bullpen arms. Porter Hodge, is he going to close? Is he not? Oh, hey, we're getting Ryan Presley. Okay, he says he'll only join us if he closes. Then that means Porter Hodge gets moved back. You still have Tyson Miller. Luke Little, is he going to be healthy? There's a lot of moving parts. I think within the next, I don't know when this will come out, but by Monday or Tuesday, I would expect things to be much more clear in the aspect of additions, subtractions, stuff like that. But for now, it's very clear that's what they've been focusing on all winter. They've looked at every possible option, whether it's free agency or trade. They've reached out on just about everyone, which is what any good team should do. Even if you don't think you have a shot at him, reach out and try, see if you're going to be lucky. We need more power. I want another power arm. Like, I want a good closer. I don't know if Ryan Presley does it for me. I don't know what you, John, or Evan, what you guys think on him. I know Evan wrote about him yesterday, I believe, wrote a little piece, but it's questionable. It's not the guy that I wanted. And I think it hurts after having Tanner Scott on the market and being like, oh, we could get like the dude. And then being like, nope, he's going to LA, as is everybody and their mother's dog. It's disappointing, but we're kind of working with scraps here, working with the backups.
Yeah, I mean, just following on that, I think it's, you watch these guys come off the board and you chalk it up to whatever you want, right? A lot of people they've got their notions one way or the other. I'm not here to convince anybody of whatever, but it's pretty obvious. We're not just talking like the top end of the overall market. It's the top end of each individual market that the Cubs and Jed Hoyer specifically avoid, often to the point that they sit back and it's like, I don't know if, I would do this, and this is not a good strategy, right? Like in Monopoly, and I'd be like, well, I'm just going to let everybody spend all their money on those expensive properties. And then it's like, yeah, dumbass, you're still going to end up landing on all those. Yeah, you saved up all your money, and now you're going to pay it out in rent when you land on everybody else's properties that they spent the money to buy. And you've got the cheap ones that nobody gives a crap about that aren't actually going to move the needle for you. And that's where it feels like, hey, Jed, just let all those top-end relievers come off the board, and maybe you'll get a deal on a David Robertson for a year, right? Let's go get a 40-year-old. And while I think David Robertson is perfectly fine, he is, as to use one of my favorite words, a perfectly cromulent reliever. Ryan Presley, fine. But you know what Ryan Presley was 2 years ago? A closer. What did the Astros do? They went out and spent a ton of money on a dude who was so good that he had to displace their current closer. The Cubs are like, ooh, we'll take that guy. We'll make him our closer. That's the part that bothers me. And part of what I wrote about today, though, if they are going to pair that up, I think you do a Presley move. I think you still need another reliable back-end guy. I would actually rather see Ryan Stanek, and I know Tommy Myers has talked about this a little bit out there, which is the funny part is like Stanek is another longtime former Astro. So it's like the Cubs are just morphing into the Astros with these guys they have picked up or are looking at. But when you look at like Robertson and Presley, the thing is they both throw 93. Their stuff is, they're a little more cutty with their stuff. The Cubs have like 57 pitchers already who do every pitcher on the roster seemingly throws 93. Like that's it. Some of them do other stuff, and Julian Merriweather can throw a little harder, I know. Luke Little can throw a little harder, I know. But Stanek is a dude who still, he hits 98. He gives you a little bit of a different look, and that's part of what they need. They need more velocity. They need to miss more bats. They need different looks, and that's just not something that they've done. They've continued, despite their own purported efforts to the contrary, they just continue to land on these dudes who it's like, man, if they popped a 95 on the radar gun, you'd be like, whoa, they're feeling themselves today. Like, that's the norm. For nobody else has this bullpen where 95 is like, ooh, that's pretty impressive. So whatever they could do to get some more of those guys. And I think, again, what it comes down to is, right, like Presley wants to be guaranteed the closer's role. Cool, I get that. Yeah, guarantee it to him until it's not guaranteed anymore, because Porter Hodge looked pretty good. They just can't lock themselves into something, but they do need upgrades. The options are limited. I get why they're doing this, but I still think they need to add 2 guys, and how that happens is kind of anybody's guess, really.
Well, like you said about the velocity, we saw like Kyle Hendricks as someone that had great success with no velocity. So maybe that sort of spurred them in the, hey, we don't need hard throwers anymore. You look at the rotation, no one really throws, like you said, that triple digits. Stanek, like you say, he throws hard. Fastball velocity is in the 96th percentile. He was fantastic last year. The ERA doesn't show it, but his ERA was 4.88, expected ERA of 3.44. So that's a 144-point difference. It's clear that he had some bad luck there. He does give up a lot of hard contact, but he strikes out a lot of people. He misses the bats. I do think that I would be very surprised if the Presley move does not happen. It really just depends on if he can figure out those small contract details with the Astros. I would hope that happens tonight or tomorrow. And then Stanek, who my inclination is they will pivot to next. And if that doesn't happen, Robertson, but Presley and Stanek, that's a totally fine. Is it Tanner Scott? No, but that's a very solid back of the bullpen with Porter Hodge, and then somebody like Luke Little or Nate Pearson, Ben Brown. Which one's going to start? Which one's going to go in the bullpen? You have a lot of solid pieces there, not even counting who you have sitting in the minors as depth.
And then they go with Presley as the closer in that scenario until they see that Presley's not working or gets injured, right?
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, Presley only has 1 year left. So that's the nice thing as well, is you get somebody for why I'm all for trading for Ryan Presley. That's experience. That's a veteran. He's won the World Series. He's made the All-Star team. Here's who you want teaching Porter Hodge about the closer role. If Presley gets hurt, that's okay. You have somebody that will have learned in Porter Hodge. You have somebody that can move up and take that role next year. If the Cubs are awful and decide to trade Presley at the deadline, if he waives it, all of that fancy contract stuff, then you have Porter Hodge there. That's okay. You have somebody to teach him. Especially with what I've been told they're giving up for the Presley deal, it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's a no-brainer to make this move to get a veteran for the clubhouse, for the bullpen, and a strong arm that, while he is not peak Ryan Presley, you still trust him to get the outs.
Yeah, is that Canario?
No, I threw that out there. It is not Canario, which is what I thought would be perfect. I mean, that's what I had tossed that around. I was talking with some prospect guys, and we're like, okay, Canario. I had somebody compare the Soler Wade Davis deal, and they said, what if it's like that? And I pitched that around and immediately got denied. No, it's not Canario. But we also, and again, this is as long as nothing changes, because I'm under the impression the deal was agreed to. It's just waiting on those small details. We're also not paying for his whole contract. So we did the salary dump with Bellinger, and everyone's like, fire Jed, fire Carter, salary dump. This is awful. But then we're the team taking on salary here. Is it the right aspect of it? Probably not. But if we don't have to pay for all of him, that still leaves room for a Stanek. And then, I mean, you got to have room for the deadline if you want to get a starter like Sandy Alcantara at the deadline, or maybe Dylan Cease doesn't get moved and his price is way cheaper at the deadline. We know that Jed's going to want $5 to $10 million before the luxury tax for the season. So with the not paying Presley the whole amount and then Stanek is not going to be too expensive, I mean, it's working out pretty well. But like Evan said, you miss on one more of these guys, and we're back to the dump of just picking up the scraps. We're always there for the cheap scraps instead of being what we should be, near the Dodgers and Mets at the top of the market.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here too, right, is like, yeah, it reminds me, and it's interesting that it's Houston again, because if you recall a couple years ago, the Cubs had a deal in place to trade Wilson Contreras to Houston, and Dusty Baker was like, nah, I don't really like it. So, there's aspects to this that like the front offices can agree, which they have, and the fact that Presley has a full no trade, which is, a condition of his option. The big thing with him, and a lot of these people are like, oh, why hadn't he made a decision? Like, look, folks, he's going to get paid the same no matter what, right? And I think a lot of us, this is this thing, we all try to look at this in like our own lives, when you think about it, you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to make the same amount of money, and in one case, I get to stay exactly where I am, we like where we live, my family's here, we're well established, or I have to move, maybe all of us have to move hundreds of miles away or thousands of miles away, right? In a situation that's new to us, that's very different. Now, so I would assume that there's a lot of, in order, he's probably going to want, hey, private jet time or something like that, so the family can fly up more easily. Maybe something different, maybe a suite every once in a while, especially in the summer when the kids are out of school. I'm sure there are some little aspects to it like that they want to try to get figured out. But one way or the other, the big thing with this is, and I'm not going to tell Ryan Presley what he should or shouldn't do, but there's a reason he wants to close. And it's not just because he has been a closer, and I've written about this, tweeted about it, whatever, but who gets paid more, closers or just other high leverage relievers? Well, it's closers, clearly. So if he can go to some place, he's only got the 1 year left. He's not a young guy, but he can still get another contract next year, whether it's for a year, 2 or 3, kind of string those along. But if he's able to move into a closer spot and he can pick up 30, 35 saves, he's going to get paid a hell of a lot better than if he just picks up 25 holds working, as the left hand to Josh Hader, right? And either way, he's going to have, if he is going to get paid now, maybe he sticks around and he re-signs with Houston. But if he wants to be a closer, he's not staying with Houston. So he's going to have to move at some point. It feels like it's in his best interest overall to okay this trade. But again, there's a whole lot to it. And I think you reach a certain point like, hey, man, I'm getting paid $14 million. Like, we're good. You give me $14 million, I'm not going to work again. Right. At my, but I'm also 45. I'm not 35. Right. But he's got to do what's best for his family more so than just himself. He's not some single guy who, yeah, cool, I'll just move to Chicago. So I think that's an area where the Cubs have traditionally done a very good job, right, of taking care of families, of taking care of players as individuals. And so I would imagine if given the chance, they'll try to pitch him on that. And I would think that the Astros would allow that, because if a deal's in place and they want to get it done, that should happen. So again, we'll see. I mean, this is a dude who's got a ton of postseason experience, and for a Cubs team that aims at getting back to the postseason, that is an area where I think, a lot of people are like, go with Hodge. And while I like that, I also look at this as a dude who's he's going to drink like a bucket of coffee. That heart's going to be racing like crazy. We actually saw, last season, he even, kind of almost blacked out on the mound, had some issues, and hopefully that ends up being fine. But you generally don't want to go into a postseason run with a closer who's got no experience on that stage. Right, let alone the regular season. But now you get to the postseason, if and when that happens, you want a dude who can literally and figuratively keep the heart rate low. A guy who. Are
you implying that there's a postseason run in the Cubs this year?
I mean, they're damn well better be.
There has to be. There has to be.
Like, they don't have a choice.
Well, for Jed Hoyer to have a job, you got to think.
Yeah, I mean, the Central. Look, there's some other teams in the Central that have. The Pittsburgh in particular, and I think the Reds hiring Tito, I think that was a really good move for them. But the NL Central is just, it's mid, right? Like, at best, there's the Brewers' devil magic has to have run out. If you can't get to 87, 88, 90 wins in this division and make the postseason, then just fire everybody. And because the rebuild never really happened in the right way anyway. But yeah, they have to plan for that. There is no option, no parachute, no safety net. You just got to jump and figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cubs had last year, they had 2 really good months, April and August. And then two kind of like, well, three kind of two mediocre months and then a couple bad months. And so it does feel like, they've improved from last season, just looking at what they've done in the offseason so far this year, knowing that if they add a couple pieces to the bullpen, that's going to improve them. I'm not so sure their starting pitching is improved, though. What do you think?
I don't think they add any more starting pitching, which is not great. Not great at all. Well, first off, I did want to go back really quick to what Evan talked about, the nature of the clubhouse and how the team treats people. Cody Bellinger is like on the record. It's not just what we've heard behind the scenes. He loved Chicago. Like, I don't remember the last time I heard a player be like, Chicago was awful. Not only the fact that it's a great city and deep dish pizza is elite food, but the team treats people well. The team treats families well. There's a lot of pluses to Chicago. I mean, that, Hotovy, now we have Zombro, the whole pitching infrastructure. I just wanted to second Evan's point about if he really wants to make more money, come to Chicago, get the closer's job, improve through this pitch lab and the Cubs' art of making relievers great again, and then cash out next offseason. But yeah, the starters is where it really starts to worry me, because you have Imanaga, Steele, Tyone, and Boyd. Who is your fifth starter? It's not going to be Colin Ray. Okay, so do you have Assad? My blood pressure can't deal with Assad for another year in the starting rotation. Wicks, injured. Looks like he lost some weight. He's getting healthier. Cool, but still, do you trust him to be healthy? Not really. And even when he was not good. Who do you go to? Nate Pearson, Ben Brown, it seems like is where they're leaning. Which one of those two do you prefer? Probably Ben Brown, but he has a neck injury, which isn't something that you can just be like, oh, cool, it looks all good again. That's going to be a worry throughout the season. Are they going to sign Jack Flaherty? No, he costs money. Are they going to trade for someone? No, because their asking prices are like some of the asking prices on these aces that are available for trade are out of this world. Like, not a chance Jed trades for them. So we're kind of stuck because, again, he waited too long. Nick Pivetta? No. I don't know what Evans or John, what your guys' thoughts are on the qualifying offer. As much as I think it's kind of overblown and they're scared of paying it, Nick Pivetta is not worth 2 draft picks and $1 million in international space because they waited too long. They let too many good players go. Walker Buehler would have been great. But again, Jed's given this budget that is just killing this team and stopping them from truly being the hands down favorites of this division.
Yeah, I feel like, last year, and that's was my favorite part of any of this stuff is like when you say they need to add pitching, and inevitably there are more than a few people in the peanut gallery who are like, the pitching was awesome last year. They need more bats. I'm like, you guys understand how pitching works, right? Like, it's not, you can't just, oh yeah, the Shota Imanaga is going to be exactly the same. Justin Steele is going to be the exact, you almost can pencil in Justin Steele for, like, look at his stats. Like, the last 3 years, almost identical across, but you need him to be able to throw more innings and be healthy. Matt Boyd, are you counting on him? If you're counting on him to give you 100 innings, then give me some of what you're drinking, because I'm not counting on that. I know Hotovy said they'd like to get 120 out of him, which I'm like, okay, cool. Let's, go back 5 or 6 years in time. If that happens, awesome. But, like, again, and we talked about this earlier, more along the lines of the bullpen, and I referenced it, they need somebody different. Nobody, again, whether we're talking about Assad, Wicks, like, line those dudes up, lefty, righty, whatever. Nothing really stands. I mean, I know they all kind of get to where they get to in different manners. They don't all throw the same pitches, but it's a really basic rotation. There's nobody in there who scares an opposing lineup, right? They can all, I mean, hey, if they're working, they can all carve. Justin Steele can be awesome. Shota Imanaga can be awesome. Matt Boyd looked great late in the season when he was able to come back, and he's done it. But none of these guys are overpowering. We're talking about 90 to 93, maybe the occasional 94. And they get outs largely. I think they were impacted positively in the exact opposite way the lineup was by the Wrigley wind blowing in so often.
Yes.
that starts
100%.
blowing out. Yeah. How many home runs would Imanaga have given up if that wind is going out hard? Like
a lot.
Yeah. So you have to look at that and think, boy, we need somebody who either pumps gas or another couple of dudes who just are ground ball specialists, whatever you've got to do. So yeah, I don't like the idea at all. And great if I'm proven wrong, but like, oh, we're stretching Nate Pearson out as a starter, huh? That reeks of desperation to me of like, what options do we have? And again, some of that has to do with like, hey, we're doing this during spring training. We're going to try it out. He'll be a long man, whatever. But, can you get another guy for a year? I love the idea of Cade Horton, but if we're talking about dudes who we can't really trust to be healthy, he's on that list. And so they have a bunch of guys to where if everything works out well in terms of health and performance, it can be a very good rotation. They do not have the right makeup, in my opinion, for it to be a great rotation. And I think that's where, when you look at who you're going to go up against in a playoff series, and you look at, let's not even bother with the Dodgers, but I would venture to say that every other team out there, while the Cubs are very consistent and have tremendous depth for the rotation, I would say that any other contending team is going to have much higher upside at the top 2 to 3 spots than the Cubs do. And that's the part that is troublesome, is because we've seen how this offense can go and how they can get shut down. I don't know that the Cubs could match blow for blow.
Yeah, that's sad but true. What about Max Scherzer? How does he fit into the equation? Does he fit into the equation at all? Is this something the Cubs would even waste their time on?
It'll be fun. I mean, I grew up watching, like, that was the dude growing up starting pitching wise. So it would be really fun as a fan, but do we trust him? It'll be a 1-year deal. He is, let's see. I mean, he's 40 almost, right?
Like 53.
Yeah, he's 40.
He's 40.
He turns 41 in July, I think.
Okay. So the dude's, I shouldn't say ancient, but in baseball terms, he's ancient. I mean, he's getting up there. He doesn't have much longer left. Is that really where you want to allocate your resources if your budget is so thin that you're pulling out the coupon book, you're trying to save every penny possible? Do you really want to risk it on him? It will be fun as a fan, but I don't. And injuries, again, I don't trust it. And I don't think the Cubs are really, I know Pat Razzo, I believe it was, put out that the Cubs attended his workout a few days ago, but I haven't heard that's the first I've heard his name connected to the Cubs. So I don't know, A, how legit that was, or B, if it's just a covering our bases sort of thing. We'll go just in case.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's the case. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
And it feels like the Cubs are in a position where, they have been spending more money. They've got, some reserve left before they hit the $220 million mark, which is their budget for this season that we've seen, which is interesting to have actually seen that number before the season starts. And it feels like maybe what they're going to do is just ride with what they've got and hope they get to the deadline, to your point earlier, Jacob, and have a little bit of gas left in the tank that they can go out and spend, that would maybe put them over the top if they needed to acquire somebody. But that just feels like a really risky proposition to me, to hope that again, to Evan's point, like, the NL Central is not a powerhouse division. You feel like, even looking at where the Cubs are right now, they should be there, right? I mean, they're going to be right around 500. They could be like, 5-ish games above 500 come the All-Star break, realistically. And that puts them probably right up near the top, maybe 2, 3, 4 games out of first. But at that point, are you actually going to go and trade for somebody to put you over the top? Or, Jed doesn't want to be there. I have to imagine. I don't think that in his mind is a position that's going to help him get an extended contract. I think he has to believe that he has to be in first place at the All-Star break. And so, does it feel like the Cubs have the team to be able to put them in first place? Maybe. I don't know.
In this division, yes.
Yeah, I mean they should.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they should. Good.
Yeah, I just want to back to the Scherzer thing real quick. Is just that he feels to me like if you were, and you look at the other teams that were there in attendance and kind of compare those. I mean, at least the Ragazzo report: Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, Blue Jays, Phillies, Braves, Red Sox. Most of those are in a position. I mean, the Dodgers are just an embarrassment of wealth in more ways than one. There, like they already have 18 starting pitchers on the roster who are all number ones on other teams, apparently, right? I mean, that's what it feels like anyway. But like Scherzer strikes me as a guy where if you're 1 through 4 are set, which I guess is kind of like what we're saying with the Cubs, like he's a really good additional piece. I would think a team like, he's not going to go to the Pirates, but like, man, can you imagine a team like having him kind of, because he was the dude, as Jacob was saying, like Scherzer was the best pitcher in baseball for maybe a decade there, at least a good 5-year stretch, right? Can you imagine him being in there to like mentor Paul Skeens, right? Somebody like that. I don't know that the Cubs necessarily need a mentor type, but I have to think that other teams are going to be more willing. Not that anybody should pay this dude a ton of money. He's definitely made his cash over the last few years now. And he's still getting paid. He's going to be paid by the Nats for a while yet. So he's good, right? He could sign for the minor or major league minimum and be fine. But I have to think somebody else pays a little bit more for that. But is that a dude, when you talk about health, we ran through the Cubs guys, many, many question marks there in terms of how healthy can they remain? How many innings can they give you? Signing another question mark is not where it's at. And I think these are some things we've touched about already. And Jacob, you touched on these. A couple other guys was like, all right, these trades are too expensive. The free agents are too expensive. I am feeling with them stretching out Nate Pearson, I'm getting the sense that they're going to be like, I think we're good on starters for now. And that's why we've heard that not prioritized, right? It was bullpen and bench. It really feels like unless something falls into their lap, just some insane, and Flaherty just is like fed up with it, like, fine, I'll play for $10 million for a year, which I highly doubt is going to happen. I feel like they're going to ride this thing to the mid-season trade deadline, somewhere in there, and be like, all right, like I said earlier, who is it? Cease? Is it somebody else that's out there? Who can we pick up kind of on the cheap relative to what they were going to cost in the winter to maybe add for the stretch run? I really think they feel like they've got enough depth that worse comes to worse, they can ride out that war of attrition for at least the first half of the season. And I don't like that, because it feels just like, yeah, we've got enough, right? Like I got enough gas to kind of coast this thing home, and I'll fill up when I get there if I need to. I would rather see them top the tank off now and not have to like hopefully find the right thing later. But I'm really getting the sense that that's what they're trying to do. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Well, what you both said about waiting until the deadline, it's what they're going to do, but it's not what they should do. Why only have Sandy Alcantara as a name that I think the Cubs have shown interest in, but then the Marlins are like, no, we're not going to trade him, and they're just going to waste him on their rotation, which dumb, but it's a poorly ran organization in Miami. Why just wait for 2 months of a good starting pitcher instead of just getting him now, so that you have him for April, May, June, July? Like, why are we waiting again for the scrap heap? Why are we waiting for the leftovers when we could very easily have gotten someone like Walker Buehler or Jack Flaherty? Now, I know there's risks involved, but there were multiple starting pitchers that were good, that were available. It just comes down to what they're willing to give up. But waiting is, okay, you're waiting, but then you have to deal with all the other teams, which last season almost every team was buying. Almost every single team was buying at the deadline, which is going to be a mess for baseball moving forward. Okay, cool. You have to be in that spot. Why don't you want a great rotation to get you to the deadline? Why are you okay with good instead of great? Like, we're settling for mediocre when we shouldn't, especially as a team that's worth $4.5 billion.
Yeah, it just seems like the Cubs just haven't figured it out. And it's been years. Like, they had it figured out when Theo was around, right? But ever since Theo left and Jed's been in charge, it just feels like, I mean, obviously they traded off the core, and then it was kind of like, waiting for prospects to develop on all the things. And that all kind of made sense. But now, as we've gotten further away from that time, it just feels like it's just not clicking. Like the ability to go out and sign not huge guys, like not big, enormous contracts like Ohtani, but just market contracts, right? Just contracts that are market rate contracts for guys who are really good players, not superstars. And for some reason, they haven't quite figured it out. And, it feels like maybe they're getting close with Tanner, but then you see, all the stuff happening with the Dodgers
Presley?
and with Tanner.
Presley?
What's that?
They got close with Tanner Scott. Okay.
Tanner
I'll just make
Scott.
sure we're on the same page.
Well, yeah, they with Tanner Scott, with Kirby Yates, those not being able to get those guys, that was a big blow for them, right? And so it's just, it felt like a big blow, and so it's just kind of like, at what point? And I think there was a really good tweet that was out there that we retweeted. That was Ken Rosenthal kind of weighing in on the Cubs and how they were talking about how they're a nonprofit organization, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and that they really just try to break even. And it's like they're not taking into consideration all the development that the Ricketts family has done around Wrigleyville, right? Like, we don't see the books. We don't know that they're really breaking even. I assume they're not. We've all been there during the summer when Wrigley is just packed and people are just spending a lot of money on those $15, $18 beers, however much they are these days. And it seems like they've got to be making a ton of money. And so when they cry poor and they just don't pull the trigger on what seems like a really basic kind of market deal, and they continue to miss out on these deals, it gets frustrating. And it feels to me like it's got to be Ricketts and not Jed. And I think Jed's obviously the guy in the front. He's a front man, right? And he's taking all the heat, but it has to be Ricketts who's saying, listen, this is the budget and you guys can't spend above it. And Jed's left trying to just figure it out.
I don't know if you guys have talked about the comments that Tom Ricketts made at Cubs convention. Have you guys haven't recorded since then, right?
No.
Okay. Well, I wrote a piece on it and I sort of had to stop myself and censor myself from just going off on it because they were tone deaf, stupid, and it kind of ruined the whole convention because everybody was really excited. Hey, Sammy Sosa's here. I wasn't born till 2005, so I didn't get to see the Sammy Sosa era, but it was still really neat to see all the fans that did were so excited. Everybody was so happy. This was one of the biggest Cubs conventions in years. And then Tom Ricketts is like, hey, yeah, we're cheap. We're just breaking even. Everybody immediately knew, no, you're not. Like, you're lying. National reporters, Ken Rosenthal's really been getting on Tom Ricketts lately, which good, keep it up. But it really showed he kind of probably accidentally pinned the blame on himself, because now what I've been saying for a while, and other people, not just me, is it's not Jed's fault. It's on Tom. Jed is doing fantastic he's doing okay with a really bad budget. It was one of my worries when Craig Counsell got here. I remember Craig Counsell's introductory press conference. My dad and I are watching it on the TV, and they show a graphic. Hey, here's how well he's done in Miami with a low budget. And my dad says, hey, how much you want to bet that they're going to do a low budget here and just not spend any money and use that as an excuse? But Counsell's done it in Milwaukee. And I said, yeah, that sounds about right. And we've seen it for that offseason and this offseason. That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get by with two people that know how to work with a low budget. Why not just up the budget and see what they can do with even more resources? We would win the division easily with a higher budget. Get Alex Bregman on this team. Pay for Jack Flaherty for 2 years. Give him $25 a year for 2 years or even 3 years. If you pay him enough money, look what the Dodgers are doing. Why aren't we deferring money? I tweeted a few hours ago, defer money to Alex Bregman. Give him a 3-4 year deal. If you defer money, the players, from what I've heard, kind of love the deferred money. So defer the contract. Make sure you can stay under the tax this year if you're going to be that cheap, but then promise that you'll go over it next year and make next year be backload the contract. Pay him 10, 15 this year. There's no reason we're not. And instead we're quickly becoming a laughingstock in baseball, not because we're losing 121 games every year, but because everybody knows we have so much potential and our owner is lying about the finances and acting like we're poor, like the Athletics, like the White Sox.
Well, the only thing I would counter with, and this goes back, I mean, it basically turned into like 2020 and into 21 turned into like every show was about the owners and the money that they're spending. The only thing I would question there is I don't think it's as much like a lot of people, and understandably so, we focus a lot on the CBT and the way those payrolls are calculated. I don't think the Ricketts family and the money that's, because not all that's part of the Cubs, I don't think they're actually as liquid as people want to believe they are. I think they're very highly leveraged with a lot of the investments that they made into these things. And while they are making money, they've had to take on a lot of minority investors. They've had to take on some other venture capital, is my understanding. And I don't know how that all balances out. And John's more the finance guy than me. But I really don't, while I don't believe Tom at the top end, because you look at this, again, if you're willing to sink all this money into these other investments, the Cubs as a team and the payroll is really no different. It's an investment that you're making. But the thing is, with payroll, that money has to be available, right? It's not like you can finance that. I mean, you can, but then you're really screwed. And then the same thing, and I only recently kind of learned how these deferments work. Like, you have to prove that the money going into those deferrals has been legitimately set aside. Like, it's not, because my thought originally was like, oh, the Dodgers don't have to worry about Ohtani's $68 million extra dollars until 10 years down the road. No, they've actually got to put that money aside, whether it's, in escrow, it's got to be in a fund. I think it can be invested, but it's got to be, it can't just be super volatile.
The thing is with that is it's a fraction of the money in real today dollars, right? Like it's 48 million.
Yeah.
That you
it's got to be the real value. But does he have it? That's my question. Like, does Ricketts actually have? I know what they're worth, but value and an actual liquid capital is, I barely even spit out my words, are very different things. And I just kind of wonder if this is one of those positions where they're over leveraged on some of this stuff and legitimately can't spend like they should be able to relative to their market and everything else, because of some of the investments that they made and because of the way that money is allocated. I don't know, but that's the only, I'm not trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I just wonder if it's a situation where it's like, it's not that he's lying. It's just that they've just been kind of stupid with the way they've done this.
Right.
Yeah.
Which would be even more depressing. Right? It'd be even worse.
Right.
I'd rather them, as bad as it sounds, I'd rather they don't.
He's a finance guy. They were running TD Ameritrade. They created TD Ameritrade.
He's a Nepo baby. He's a Nepo baby. He was born with a silver spoon. He's not smart. His dad made all the money.
I know, but he would have you believe that he's earned everything that he got.
Right? He's like, without the gibberish. I mean, what have any of them done on their own merits that weren't facilitated by their father's billions and billions of money that they had to get from him and prove this to him? I mean, I look, I'm not saying Tom's an idiot, but I mean, he did try to explain to me how freaking arbitration salaries work. I'm like, dude, that's the most, very well aware of how arbitration works. Thank you for that. But it felt like he was trying to explain this like he was a genius. And I'm like, I don't know if you're as smart as you think you are, buddy.
Well,
but
did he really mismanage the team? Like, it's not like we're talking about, I mean, I mentioned like these small market teams. How did you mismanage it that bad that if you are cutting even, that's like you said, that's worse than just not willing to pay. If you are truly cutting even with where this franchise is right now, that is more of an indictment than just, I don't want to spend the money.
The business operations, we've talked about this far too often, and I can get into it again, but the business operations to me has been the biggest shortcoming of this organization over the last 15 years or so of the Ricketts ownership.
How is Crane Kinney still there?
Dude, I don't know if he's got naked pictures of somebody or what, but it's just if we isolate it to their television contract alone, it is the biggest fumble. Like, we were looking at the Ravens fans are really pissed about Mark Andrews dropping that 2-point conversion. That's like the business ops for the Cubs year after year after year. They knew 5 years before Marquee launched. That's when Sportsnet LA got going. It's part of the reason the Dodgers are able to do what they're doing, because they're making like $250 million per year. It's like 225, something like that, just on the television contract. Marquee's not doing a fraction of that. They are doing a fraction of that. It's a very small one. But the Cubs could have bought, and everybody said, well, it was contingent on the sale. They had to keep these. Any contract can be bought out, right? Like, just like with a player, just like anything else. Money will, if they had, but here's the thing. The Cubs didn't have the liquid money. They spent all their money to buy the team and then had to wait out those 5 years to then start Marquee, which didn't do nearly as well as what they thought, partially because they did a poor job of rolling it out, mostly because they had missed the bubble in a bad way. The Dodgers capitalized on it. Other teams did. The Cubs failed to do so because they were still running with their 2 local networks, or 3, split amongst everything else. If they had launched Marquee 5 years earlier, totally different story. I'm willing to bet, and it doesn't matter, I could bet whatever I want because we can't go back in time 10 years now. If the Cubs had launched Marquee in 2015, imagine having their own broadcast network with a monster contract that somebody would have given them heading into that 2015 and then 2016 season. We are talking worlds different in terms of the overall revenue coming in versus what they've got. I feel like, without derailing this completely, that's the root of the issue right there. Go back to 2015. They should have bought those other companies out, the other broadcast partners out, started their own thing, regardless of the cost. But there again,
they were too damn cheap.
Right. There we go. It's the same thing. They're not going to pay for Bryce Harper. They're not going to pay for Juan Soto. They're not going to pay for Ohtani. They don't do it, and then they have to sit back and watch the fruit. So I really think, like, when it comes to breaking even, I don't believe that's true. Actually, I do believe it's true in terms of you could get them to figure out the accounting and cook the books well enough to prove that it is, because they funneled money off somewhere else to be like, yeah, see, look, we broke even. We're just a nonprofit. We're basically a charity. But I do think that they've severely mismanaged the way this whole thing has gone from a business operations perspective, to the point that they can't operate like the Mets and Dodgers because they simply don't have the available cash that those teams do, either because Steve Cohen owns them or because they're making $1 billion in TV revenue every 4 years. That's right. Kind of where I land on it. They're big fat dum-dums is really where it ends up.
Yeah. You're charging $85 a hot dog, and then it's $50 extra if you want ketchup on it. Yet you're like mismanaging this poorly. Where is all that money going? Like you said, they mismanaged this and they fumbled the bag, like, pun intended. But it's just looking at how much money this team brings in. Yet, like you mentioned, they took out these loans. They have these other investors. I mean, selling the team is going to be the best option for this franchise to win again, but we all know that's not going to happen.
No, and God, you never know what you're going to get with an owner, right? I mean, the Cubs have seen their share of bad ownership, so it is what it is. But there is good news around the corner, and the good news is that, and no one can take this. Well, knock on wood, outside of like a pandemic, no one can take it from us. Is that in about 2 weeks? On February 9th, pitchers and catchers report to Mesa.
Ew.
And in 3.5 weeks, there's going to be baseball. There will be baseball in Mesa, Arizona. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona, and right now it's kind of cold. The high's like 55, maybe it's 60. Feels cold to us, but I'm sure to everybody else in the country who's been. Evan, what have you? Yeah, Jacob, you've been pretty cold too, right?
Yeah, we had a day that was negative 30 the other day. We're sitting around like negative 10 to 10.
That's like a fire doesn't even help in that situation. I mean,
it's awful.
Well, I mean, that's just too cold.
Oh yeah, my car broke down. So I went, grabbed my brother's car to go to work. Nope, his broke down. The windows are all iced over. Everybody's miserable. It's just, I can't wait for spring.
And you posted... there's a lot of activity in Mesa right now. Our friend Rich Beisterfeld has been posting, he's down there. He's a photographer, kind of just does it on his own. and does a great job of posting up content. Jacob, I'm looking at one post that you put out. It was a couple weeks ago now of Porter Hodge deadlifting some pretty serious weight there.
He's him.
He is him. And so that I think, this is kind of like the period where it's just like the anticipation starts to build, the nerves start to kind of get going. And then next thing you know, you're sitting on the berm in Mesa and everything feels like it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I hope
Maybe
so.
That's true.
That's true. It was like 33. It's clouded over now, but it was 33 and sunny. And for real. My son had a pitching clinic at noon today, and he left the house in shorts and a t-shirt. Right. And then I was like, you're an idiot. And then I was at the gym. I was on the elliptical. And when I got done, I'm pretty sweaty. I was like, I don't want to put my sweatshirt on over this sweaty ass shirt. I walked outside. I was like, oh, this isn't actually too bad. Like, that's how bad it's gotten. Of course, on Thursday, when I dropped the kids off at school, it was 8. Right. So we're talking, hey, 25-degree difference and sunny. Hell yeah, baby. Let's go. Felt like spring. It was wonderful.
And Evan, you're coming down to Mesa at some point. I think
Yep.
I've got it on my calendar.
I think so.
And
I haven't
Jacob,
bought my plane ticket yet, but we'll get there.
Okay. Jacob, what about you, buddy?
I don't have any making me want to, but I don't have any plans for Mesa right now. I have opening day. I'll be at opening day, but otherwise, and then I'm looking into possibly an extra game or two before I head out to Massachusetts for the summer. But yeah, I want to. I'm thinking I went to spring training 2 years ago. It'll be cool to be around there, see a game, see some of the prospects. But as of now, nothing is booked. I will try, and then my dad will say that it's too expensive and try to steer me away from that.
Well, Jacob, we have a spare bedroom. You can stay in our house for free. And you could probably, assuming Evan's not here, use one of our 2 tickets to go to the game. So there's that. All you need is the airplane ticket.
All I need is the airplane ticket, or I'll just walk. It'll take a little bit. I'll have to call off sick from work for a very long time, but I'd get there. I'd get my cardio in.
Do it for charity. Get some donations. Get some, get some buzz around it. Right? Then it's like they can't fire you if you're doing it for charity.
We've learned that Cubs fans are willing to pay for very dumb things. So if I start a GoFundMe, it might work.
No doubt. Like I'm walking to spring training.
I'm bringing Midwestern Illinois to Mesa, Arizona. I'll bang on a wall. I'll do whatever I need.
You better get started because it's going to take you a while.
But with your luck, you'll get there like when they're in Japan, and you'll just miss all the game. Like you won't see any.
Oh, 100%.
I'm now just gonna turn around and head back.
I'm Google mapping right now. I'm actually curious how long it would take me to walk. Clearly, I'm not going to. But
yeah, what are the? I wonder what
it is
minutes or hours. I'm guessing. Let's see. If we had to guess, wow. Hours.
So it's a 22-hour drive. 22 hours and 9 minutes. It would take 6 days to bike. What is your guess for how long it would take to walk from my house to Mesa, Arizona?
How many miles? 3,000? No, 2,500.
23 days.
1,400. 1,400 miles, 22 days, 529 hours.
I was off by a day, dude. That's pretty good.
That's not bad. And I'm walking through Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, and then I land in Arizona. I'll be able to go through, I can go through Kansas City. I can move my map a little, go through Kansas City. That would be fun. Denver's a little out of the way, but I could go to Santa Fe. I could go to Sedona. Yeah, we could do that.
Hey. Now,
I think it's like 22 days straight, though, right?
Right. That's right. That's 22 days of walking. So if you never
that's true.
If you never slept, you could make it in a little over 3 weeks. You'd die. 5 or 6 times on the way. But so really we could realistically like double that or triple that because there's no way in hell you're walking even 12 hours a day. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work out real well for
But
anybody.
if I biked, it says 6 days for biking. So you double that.
Your
12,
dad is going to kill us.
A few days of rest. Oh, 100. You better bet right when I walk out, I'm going to talk to him and be like, hey, plane tickets, Mesa. How about it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it says 6
Either
days.
that biking, or the bike.
Right. So, yeah, that, or do you want me to bike? And I can just say, you know what, you're risking the life of your son because I could die on the bike. So he's kind of going to get put into a corner there. 12 days on a bike isn't bad because I'm going to be sleeping for 6 of them, biking for 6. It says 139 hours on a bike. I'll get up to about 7,700 feet. The peak is 7,700 feet. And then the depth will be 472 feet.
It's got to be Flagstaff.
Well, it looks like it's a very gradual and just very slow climb. And then right about 5 days, almost when I'm almost there, nothing but downhill. So there you go. I could easily, that last day will be a breeze.
All right. Well, it wasn't our idea, just for liability reasons.
No, it wasn't. No, I'll blame that on me. He's used to me asking about, hey, can I do this? And then he shuts me down after showing me the price.
Sounds like a dad thing to do. All right. Well, cool. Yeah. It's been good. I don't think we solved anything at all, but hopefully we shed some light on a few topics, specifically the bullpen. And then, we've been podcasting, once every couple of weeks. And so I think we'll stay on that path until, there's a clear guidance from some spirit above that tells us we should be doing more, or just more people listen to us and demand that we record more.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. I want to thank you guys for having me on. I would love to come on again, hopefully after some good results, after we get some actual transactions, because I am tired of waiting for Ryan Presley to decide where he's going to live next summer.
On that note, all right, well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Evan. And we'll see you all later.
Peace.